Well,
Thank you for having
we're
me.
looking at the sovereign bond that's looking to be issued, and certainly Leon saying that it's it's not necessarily altogether negative, but some have argued that increased political risk threaten to have Kenya's sovereign credit rating downgraded, meaning that the country could possibly find it difficult to raise capital from the international markets. What's your sense of what's playing out there and the influence it could have on the issuance of this bond?
I think political risk is only going one way in Kenya, and that's down. I think we've peaked on the political risk front. I think it's really an opportunity now for the government to issue their Eurobond. I think we've got process where we had no process before. We've got a light at the end of the impunity tunnel, and I think it's going to be quite a cathartic moment the day that the ICC pick up a few people out of that list of 20. So when I look at the political risk equation in Kenya, I see us in a sweet spot on a declining political risk barometer. So I definitely would say political risk in Africa is very counterintuitive, and I think this is exactly one example of it.
Well, in that context, we've got the market over in Kenya making slow and steady progress. How do you see things play out as we kick this week off?
Well, I think, most African stock markets, and Nairobi is no exception, are in a very sweet spot. They were plundered over the last 2 years, and you're seeing you're seeing some appreciation in the frontier market asset class. I think that's a theme for 2010. I think these markets remain cheap. I think we're not looking at a T-bill bubble. We're actually looking at a one-off move in African interest rates. They are way too high. The benefit that a bondholder gets paid is just so juicy, it's practically obscene. And I think we're seeing an adjustment process now, finally. And I think that's a very, very positive headwind for equity markets in Africa, and in particular in Nairobi.
Well, talking about themes that are fast developing for 2010, I mean, as I was saying earlier, we're starting to see locals starting to dominate the equities space over in Kenya, and trading on the T counters still staying pretty dominant.
Absolutely. I mean, retail investors do remember we have 2 million shareholders in Kenya. It's a Thatcherite experiment, a shareholder revolution all of its own. They were all submerged after the Safaricom IPO, and finally we're coming out of ICU. They've come a bit later than the foreign investors, but really it's a powerful dynamic for the Nairobi Stock Exchange. With regard to T stocks, they remain so out of whack in terms of prices that the adjustment had to happen. Just because it didn't happen for so long did not mean it wasn't going to happen. And we have significant values still in these T stocks. I'll give you the biggest gainer this year has been Kakuzi, and that still trades on a PE of 4.5. It is ridiculous. And then furthermore, with these T stocks, what is really attracting people is that you can buy them, you can break it up, sell it for real estate, and you can make 10 times your money. And that really is sort of returns that people cannot and are no longer prepared to miss out on.
Well, very quickly before we go, Aly-Khan, just a note on terms of the gainer and loser board. On Thursday, we had the highest gainer coming in as East African Portland Cement gaining 6.4%. And then on the loser board, Aty-River Mining declining 7.9%. Why such a divergence there? Was there any news behind those moves?
There was no news. It was Aty-River was moved around on about 1,000 shares. And if you want to buy shares, you might as well sell 1,000, down 10%, and try and see if you can pick some up the next trading session, which is, I think, what happened in Aty-River Mining. With Portland Cement, you've got a very cheap share on a PE basis. It's about 4.5. There's very little supply. Most of it is locked up with the NSSF, and I expect a sort of price appreciation over time. It gets a little bit volatile because there's just no volume around, but it looks a cheap share as well. Aty-River's very strong support at 100. Really like the story with Aty-River, the scale up, but you have to hold it to 20.